Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Graham, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
I'm here to talk about mainly the great airport theft, I call it, and but mainly my comments are going to be about Tom Rose, the mayor of Stephenville. Quick comment on snow clearing. I lived in St. John's for 7 years in the 70s, and it seems as though nothing has changed. It's the same problems, and it goes on and on, I guess. One of your previous callers was the member from Torngat, and she talked about issues that she categorized as trust, and how did we get here? And that's what I'm going to talk about this morning with regard to this airport scandal.
Sure. And just a quick reference to city snow clearing here. This isn't by no means an effort to defend the state of snow clearing. But, we always have the comparison between Mount Pearl and St. John's. Mount Pearl snow clearing is so good. But, of course, a much flatter community with wider streets, given a city that's centuries old and narrow streets. And there's a lot of tricky sections of St. John's to actually snow clear. And that's not a defense, that's just a fact.
Well, I agree totally with you. St. John's has a unique situation with streets and hills and all that. They also have a unique situation with weather. There's nowhere else I've ever lived where you get 3 seasons in the same day.
Well, out on the West Coast, you actually get winter. We get some sort of combination of spring and winter rolling together, which leads to nothing but ice and slush, as opposed to nice, fluffy, falling straight down snow.
Tell me about it. I actually lived in Ottawa for the past 27, it's before we moved back here, but for 27 years, and it's a flat area. It's a much colder climate in terms of temperature, but you don't get the wind, and they get lots of snow. So it's very different. But St. John's is quite unique. They do have a lot of problems. Anyway, to get back to my subject, Patty, it's absolutely appalling, actually, what's gone on here. Tom Rose is running a campaign supporting a chap by the name of Trevor Murphy, who is running for a council seat. There's a by-election next Wednesday for 3 council seats on the Stephenville Council. There was 3 councillors that actually resigned. This fellow, Trevor Murphy, was the former chair of the Airport Corporation, and he signed off on this agreement back in 2022, actually just about giving the airport away for nothing but a bunch of promises, and promises that, of course, Diamond could never have fulfilled. This whole issue is about Tom Rose. Diamond is a sideshow. He's a con man. He had no money to invest in anything, still hasn't, and all the promises and talk he's given over the past 2 years is just garbage. That airport down there today has absolutely nothing going for it except a lease with the GH2 people for a laydown space and other things. Now, that's what they're hoping to do. The problem I have, of course, is when did Tom Rose actually know about the project coming here? This guy actually is living in a house which he doesn't even have a permit for on his property. It's within the Stephenville boundaries. The council a few years ago actually issued a eviction notice to this guy. He wasn't mayor then. But they didn't enforce it, and they put it in abeyance until there was a study being done by the Provincial Water Resources Management people, which came out a couple of weeks ago. An absolutely disaster. This guy has some property there, which he inherited, and he wants to subdivide it, and he's been talking about that for years. The water resource people said that the property is sitting on top of, I live in Kippens, the Kippens aquifer. There's 2 aquifers, one for Stephenville, one for Kippens. Now, Rose's property sits on top of the Kippens aquifer, and their report says absolutely no development there whatsoever. Now, of course, he's still living there. There's to be no further development there whatsoever. and the only water supply they're allowed to have there is shallow wells. And this is the guy. He's been doing this for years. He's been after trying to subsidize, get a subdivision going. And I think this is the final thing. I don't know what this council's going to do. He's the mayor, so if there's ever a conflict, this guy's in constant conflict. Believe me, and it has to end. With respect to the airport, yes, the airport has been sold to Carl Diamond, and after 2.5 years of lies and obfuscation from these people, they finally found some chap out in Saskatoon who was a $50 million lottery winner, and he provided a $1.1 million mortgage to Diamond in order to pay off the debts of the corporation. There was a $900,000 line of credit for the province, which had to be paid off. So that's how he got the airport. Now, it's completely ridiculous. Tom Rose never, or Diamond particularly, never presented a business plan or anything else to the board with regard to operating an airport, where the revenue was going to come from, all that kind of stuff. Just normal things that a transaction of this nature would require. It's just absolutely outrageous. And what's happened, of course, is that the people who are running the airport have just completely run over the board in terms of Rose is a bully. He did the same thing on the council. I've heard that provincial OH&S people were in the council office last week interviewing employees. And, it's just outrageous what this guy is doing. Unfortunately, Municipal Affairs seems to have been silent on this up to this point. I don't know if they're going to do anything or not. This whole scheme was fraudulent from day one, and you have to go back to September 9th, 2021. To understand, basically, this guy came on the scene, was introduced with a bang by Tom Rose, who was running for re-election as mayor, and that's the only thing he had on his platform was this savior of the airport, so-called guy, Diamond. I was in Ottawa at the time, and I got a call that morning to listen to this broadcast. It was carried by CBC, not CBC, NTV, and it was carried on NTV. I watched the thing. I almost fell off my chair listening to the absolute dribble. I've been around aviation a long, long time. I was a former chair, and it's just absurd, these people. They didn't know what they were talking about. And, for people to sit there and accept this guy as a savior, it's beyond my comprehension. But this goes on. This is not, I guess, this is unique to this area because certainly there's nobody else that has this old military airport. And, there's no way now, given the announcements by Porter last couple days ago, about servicing new routes out of St. John's and Deer Lake. There'll never be any passenger flights into Stephenville. Just ain't going to happen. That's the three major airlines now that service Deer Lake. It's only an hour and a half away. I mean, a large portion, the majority portion of Canadians live more than an hour and a half away from a regularly scheduled airline flight. It's that simple. Well, people here just don't seem to understand that. But in any event, this thing with Diamond and Tom Rose is just as rotten as it comes. Back during the mayoral campaign back in 2021, when Tom Rose was running and promoting Diamond as the savior, he actually, this is my belief, he actually got the RCMP to visit two businessmen in town. One was the previous mayor, and another businessman and myself, because we were supporting his opposition. And these people called and talked to the other two chaps and told them that because I had written an email about Diamond and what I had found in the public domain, took me about half an hour to figure out this guy is a complete fraud. He was talking about he had all kinds of companies going. He had aircraft and wind tunnel testing and blah, blah, drones and blah, blah. It was just garbage. And the RCMP talked to these chaps. I put that information out to some friends in town. And the RCMP actually went to these people and talked to them and said that they wanted to talk about the emails circulating because Diamond wanted them to stop. Now, look, that's, first of all, interference in an election. RCMP aren't supposed to do that. But the poor chap that actually visited us was a constable. Constables don't make those kinds of decisions by themselves. Rose had his buddy sergeant, no doubt, make that, try that. And I put a formal complaint into the commandant of Division B in St. John's, and of course the whole thing stopped immediately. And I got a very, a nice response in writing. But it was a little bit different from what really happened because I got a call from a sergeant who said he was in charge of the detachment at Stephenville. This guy, he just beat around the bush, and he actually threatened to charge me with some ridiculous charge that had happened to be never, ever charged before in Canada, because the call happened to come in on my cell phone while I was visiting a good friend of mine, a very old friend, who happens to be in the law business. And, we laughed at him, and the guy hung up. It's just, what goes on around here is just absurd. And yes, it's a small town, and yes, it's not unique, but this is just outrageous what's happened here with this airport. Absolutely outrageous. The people that supported this airport over the years, and the province, with its $900,000 line of credit to keep the doors open, and the people of the Bay St. George area who did everything in the world to support the thing. They even did fundraising for the
Sure.
thing.
Had there been some just cockeyed optimism because there was really very little in the way of future for the airport, the town was looking like they were going to cut off continually to supply with municipal funds. So maybe, just maybe, they felt like, oh my God, here comes the savior. But even if you feel that way, with no real rationale behind it to fuel that anticipation for all the work that Mr. Diamond had promised, even if there was a caveat in the contract, unless you can come up with the capital and timelines for advancing, whether it be beyond the runway work, because that was federal money, it wasn't Carl Diamond's money, even if there were caveats, well, here's what happens. If you don't have some action in place by X, then we are going to cancel the sale and go back to the drawing board. Because all kinds of businesses done like that. I've been in business relationships where if I can't achieve certain tickable benchmarks or milestones at a certain point that's agreed upon inside a negotiation, that's it for the contract. So even just adding some protections like that would have been helpful.
Absolutely, Patty. And the whole issue was that's exactly what happened. And this is a very depressed area of the province, and they've had no real economic activity for years and years. And the people were very susceptible to this phony. And so that's what happened. And they accepted him with open arms. And the other thing, there was obviously no due diligence done. Because if they had done due diligence, they would have found out quickly about Mr. Diamond's background, a former bankrupt, absolutely broke, coming out of bankruptcy, and he presented himself as a rich millionaire, investor. Now, the CBC published articles, a series of articles, 3 or 4, confirming all this. They're the people that broke the story about the sale for $6.90 and all that, $6.90, and the fact that Mr. Diamond had borrowed $30,000 from Easy Financial at an interest rate of 29%. that year. And, it went on. And that's all been corroborated by CBC Investigate.
Right. So, I do have to get to the break. I'll give you the final word here, Graham. I do have to go.
Thank you for the time, and I just hope people listening to this will begin to understand what has happened there. And this is not about Carl Diamond. This is all about Tom Rose, the mayor.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.
Take care.